Chapter 9 Overland Saraloon Caravan Yards, 12th of Chess, 1362 Dalen's Reckoning, Sunrise. Gaheris awoke before first light, startled awake by a nearby ox shifting on his heavy hooves. He looked around groggily before remembering where he was. Shaking himself awake, the boy noted the lightening sky in the east and rose to a crouch, taking stock of the situation. There was a guard near the pile of goods he hidden himself in, but her back was turned. He slowly stole out of his place between the large bundles of linen and ducked out of the caravan's place in the yard before the guard decided to turn around. If he was going to join the caravan, he'd need to pay his way. With that in mind, he trotted off toward the city's open-air bazaar, knowing just how to get what he needed. Gaheris casually leaned against the wall of the last house on a street called Coin Purse Cut before it emptied into the bazaar, watching the people going to the open-air market with a practiced eye. After a few minutes, he caught sight of a likely prospect, an extravagantly dressed man wearing colors no doubt belonging to one of the Symbian merchant houses, bearing a fat coin purse strapped to his belt. It was so fat, in fact, that he would likely miss the weight immediately, mused the young cut purse. Fortunately, he had a cure for that. Hefting the leather pouch of rocks he had gathered for this purpose, the red-haired youth moved out into the crowd. Weaving his way through the crowd of pedestrians heading for an early start to their shopping, he got in front of his target and walked toward him. When they were just a few feet apart, he turned his head to look off to his right, the illusion of not paying attention to where he was going. He then walked headlong into the merchant. "Here now, lad, watch where you're going!" exclaimed the man, as Gaheris steadied himself by grabbing his target's arm, apparently dropping his own purse as he did so. Sorry, sir," he responded, hurriedly bending over to retrieve the dropped money bag. The merchant hurriedly checked his own belt, and, finding his own heavy purse there, relaxed noticeably. "Now, don't you just go running into people like that," he admonished the street urchin. "It's no wonder you're stuck out here on the street if that's all the attention you pay to your doings," he continued, eyeing Gaheris' ragged clothes with distaste. "Now run along, get out of my sight!" Gaheris bowed slightly and hurried away, quickly losing himself in the morning crowd, still clutching the purse he had gathered from the ground. He would be long gone before the noble noticed that the purse at his belt was, in fact, simply hooked over the sliced remains of his own purse straps, thought the pickpocket in satisfaction, slipping his dagger back up his sleeve. He hurried back to the caravan yard as the sun climbed higher in the sky, having used some of the money to buy himself some better clothes and a bath. This still left him enough to buy or bribe his way into the caravan while making him look at least remotely civilized, enough so that they'd probably let him in at any rate. Spotting the caravan he'd surreptitiously bedded down in starting to form up at the gates, he hurried forward, approaching the man he took to be the caravan master. At least, he was the one shouting orders. "Excuse me, sir," he said politely as he approached the taller man. "Yeah, what do you want?" The caravan master's voice was irritable, clearly annoyed at having been interrupted from ordering his wagons. "Sorry to bother you, sir, but I'm leaving town for the north and I'm looking for a group to travel with, at least for a while. Can I join your caravan?" The man looked down. "We're heading for Archenbridge. Is that about the right direction for you?" "Yes, that'll do fine," he said. "Well, the guards don't come cheap, you know," the man told him. "Costs will run to 5 silver ravens for the trip if it's just you on foot." "Done," Gaheris said, not wanting to bother haggling. He dug into the borrowed pouch and counted out 5 silver coins, handing them over to the caravan master. "Well, good," he said, somewhat taken aback by the failure to try and bargain him down, but not about to argue. "We go out the gate at high sun. Either you're with us or not. I've not the time to run about gathering folk that can't be bothered to show up on time." "I understand. I'll just wait around here, then." The caravan master nodded. "Here, then, sign the register." He grabbed a roughly bound book from the wagon seat he was standing next to, opened it to about the middle, and held it forth along with a quill. Gaheris hesitated for a moment before signing Stead Cormwin on the sheet of paper. He almost immediately kicked himself for using the same alias as he had on the ship, but there was no taking it back now. "All right then, Master Cormwin," the caravan master said to him. "Just fall in wherever you want. If you're lucky, one of the merchants might let you ride in his wagon. On mine, it'll cost extra." Gaheris nodded and hurried back into the main body of the caravan, not wanting to stay in sight any longer than necessary. It wasn't long before the caravan rolled out of the gates wagon by wagon and started on the road north toward the Dalens. Gaheris walked along next to one of the carts in the middle of the wagon train, slowly relaxing as Saraloon faded behind them with no sign of pursuit. The day wore on quickly as the caravan continued on the road northwest, making for Serb, where they would overnight before crossing the River Arkin to Archenbridge. They would reach the city an hour after nightfall. The crossroads town of Mulhessen provided a stopover point for a short while before continuing on the Belduc road, but the crossing with the Way of the Manticore, upon which the town stood, was well behind the caravan by the time the sun began to set. Selune rose in the east as the sun set in the west, accompanied by her tears. Toril's moon was waning, but still more than half that night, but storm clouds were starting to blow up from the south off of the Sea of Fallen Stars. The wagon masters quickened the caravan's pace, eager to reach Serb before the night wore on too long. But it had worn on long enough. A bullseye lantern suddenly shone down on the lead wagon from a small hillock overlooking the road. "Belay there! Stand and deliver your money or your lives!" The figure holding the lantern shouted out his demand in a booming voice, startling the members of the caravan even as the mercenary guards coolly drew steel and readied lances. Gaheris pulled out his own long dagger as he slipped behind the nearest wagon, mind racing. "We'll deliver naught to you but steel and spell," answered the leader of the caravan's guards, a wizard judging from the arcane light already dancing at his fingertips. "Get back over that hill or you won't live long to regret it." The bandit simply laughed. "Hear that, boys? They want some fun!" He then switched to a guttural tongue that Gaheris didn't recognize, but made one or two of the guards go pale at the sound of, unless the torchlight deceived him. More bandits crested the hill and came up out of the grass on the other side of the road as well. Shots flew from crossbows as targets presented themselves, but soon the defender's attention was taken by another sight. A great green shape, hunched over with its arms hanging nearly to the ground, lumbered over the hill behind the bandits. Its long nose stood out prominently in the features of its warty face, starkly lit by the moon's light and the guttering torches. Its claws flexed as it regarded the wagons with an expression somehow displaying both stupidity and contempt simultaneously. The troll roared out a challenge in the giant's tongue and charged the caravan.